Along the legendary Route 66, under a Texas sunset, farmer David stood overlooking his dry grass field, now only days away from harvest. 3 long months of hard work were finally about to pay off, enough to help his family keep up with bank payments and protect the ranch from the threat of foreclosure. But that peaceful scene was only a curtain hiding a far more dangerous reality lurking beyond the edge of the property. There was a problem. A dark force of long-snout destroyers had quietly taken control of the surrounding brush country. A massive sounder of 19 wild hogs suddenly appeared, tearing through the front yard, rooting up the lawn, and devastating the ranch's cornfields. They didn't just churn everything into mud and destruction. They also displayed remarkable intelligence, repeatedly challenging fences and defenses that were supposed to keep them out. With every passing night, David watched the risk grow greater. If the damage continued, 3 months of labor could disappear overnight. The destruction became worse with each passing night. Determined to stop the sounder before deer season began, David and a team of hunters deployed an upgraded Jaeger Pro mine gate trap system. They pushed deep into the brush, carefully assembling heavy steel panels and spreading corn bait throughout the enclosure. The goal wasn't simply to trap the hogs immediately. They needed to condition the animals first, allowing them to become comfortable entering and exiting the trap without fear. Patience would be the key to defeating the dominant sow leading the group. But things became even more complicated. The hogs seemed to sense danger. Night after night, they approached cautiously, inspecting entry points and lingering just outside the trap while grunting and posturing from a distance. David knew the clock was ticking. If the hogs weren't captured before deer season opened, gunfire from deer hunters could push the entire sounder deeper into the thorny wilderness, making them nearly impossible to trap again. One mistake, one delay, and the family ranch could pay a very heavy price. Determined to act decisively, David upgraded to a next-generation Jaeger Pro trap, equipped with infrared cameras and remote cellular activation. Now all they could do was wait and monitor every movement in the darkness. Then, one night beneath a thin crescent moon, everything changed. David's phone suddenly lit up with an urgent alert. 11 wild hogs were crowding deeper and deeper into the circular trap, competing for scattered kernels of corn. Without hesitation, he pressed the activation button. The steel gate slammed shut with a thunderous crash that echoed through the woods. In an instant, the entire group was trapped. The clever invaders had finally been outsmarted. The success continued. The team established another smart trapping station known as the Hog Houdini system, managed by hunters Chase and Muddy Feet on a separate section of land facing similar challenges. The new trap quickly proved its effectiveness. It successfully captured another 15 aggressive wild hogs, including a massive sow weighing an impressive 231 pounds. Inside the enclosure, the giant animal charged repeatedly into the steel panels, using its thick shoulder shield like living armor in an attempt to break free. The trap held, but the situation remained dangerous. Cornered inside the confined steel enclosure, the hogs' aggressive instincts erupted. They squealed, fought, and clashed violently against one another. Dust flew through the air. The sound of their roars and impacts echoed across the property, creating an intense and potentially hazardous environment for everyone working nearby. safely resolve the situation, the team created a carefully planned loading route. Corn was scattered in a trail leading directly from the trap entrance to a livestock trailer. The strategy worked perfectly. Driven by instinct and food motivation, the hogs followed the path one by one. Within a short time, the entire group had been loaded safely and efficiently onto the trailer for transportation to a processing facility where the meat could be utilized to help support local communities. As dawn spread across Route 66, warm sunlight once again touched the ranch. The fields still bore scars from the damage, but peace had returned. Standing outside his small wooden home, David watched the trailer disappear into the distance, carrying away the troublesome invaders. The battle had been difficult, but the determination of David's family, combined with modern trapping technology, had proven one thing. No destructive force would take away the land that generations of his family had worked so hard to preserve. Three weeks in a row, I woke up to see the field torn apart as if a battle had swept through it overnight. The devastation said everything. They had come back. And this time, it was the entire herd. I had no other option. We decided to set a drop gate trap. This wasn't the kind of trap meant to catch a single animal. It was designed to seal in the whole herd in one decisive moment. Either it worked completely, or it failed completely. I spent the entire day setting the trap with absolute care. After days of studying the tracks the wild boars had left behind, that afternoon, I stood there for one final check. The steel gate hung, suspended, waiting for the slightest trigger. Everything had to be exact, because there would be no second chance. When night fell, no one spoke much. All attention was fixed on the surveillance screen. Near midnight, the herd began to appear. They sensed something unusual about the structure, yet they couldn't resist the bait we had prepared inside. One by one, they stepped in, hesitant, alert. They were inside. I nearly held my breath, waiting for the last boar to cross the threshold. In that split second, I pressed the trigger on my phone. Then suddenly, crash! The heavy steel door slammed down onto the ground. In an instant, the exit was sealed. Chaos erupted. Snarls burst out in waves. The entire herd lunged at the enclosure like a storm. They rammed the steel mesh, clawed at the earth, spun frantically in search of escape. Flashlight beams swept across dark. Muscular bodies collided in desperation. A massive boar charged straight at the gate. The impact split the night, with a harsh metallic crack, but the door did not move. They were locked in. In that moment, adrenaline surged through me. Weeks of tension exploded all at once. But it wasn't over. The next morning, while we were still dealing with the first trap, my phone vibrated again. The sensor in the southern section had been triggered. The second trap. This time it was broad daylight. Under the clear light, I could see the panic in their eyes more distinctly. No darkness to hide it. The gate was shut tight. The herd was compressed into a narrow space, circling, crashing into one another in desperation. Before we could steady ourselves, another alert came through. The third trap had fallen. In less than 24 hours, 3 steel gates had dropped one after another. The herds that had devastated the field were now contained within the traps we had spent weeks preparing. At last, the field was quiet again. No more sleepless nights. No more chaos in the dark. But as I stood looking toward the forest, I understood something I had never truly thought about before. We hadn't really won. We had only reclaimed a stretch of silence. And sooner or later, it would test us again. That night, the wild boars came right up to the edge of the residential area. Fresh tracks overlapped old ones. The grass was torn apart. The shared pathway churned into chaos. One look was enough to know we couldn't wait until tomorrow. We had to act early, the moment the threat began pressing against the neighborhood. But we didn't charge straight into the most chaotic spot. Instead, the team chose to block the gateway right along the route the herd was bound to pass through if they intended to move in. It was still close intervention, still timely. The only difference was position. We acted where the risk could be controlled. reducing damage without pushing the entire neighborhood into greater danger. Rather than confronting them head-on, the trap was set at a natural exit point. A movement corridor the herd had no choice but to cross if they continued forward. This was not where they caused disruption, but where they moved in the most familiar and predictable way. The traditional corral trap was designed as an open control ring. Its structure allowed the boars to approach naturally, without sudden pressure, without disrupting the herd's existing order. That key element made the control process safer and more effective. The value of the trap did not lie in how many animals were contained, but in where the herd was brought under control. When the trap was triggered, the process unfolded quietly. No loud noises, no disturbance to the sleeping neighborhood. The herd was held within a space large enough to maintain order, yet separated enough to fully isolate the risk. Instead of spreading outward, the danger was contained at a clearly defined control point. At that moment, the trap was no longer merely a tool for holding animals. It became a strategic checkpoint where the safety of the community was protected through calculated control. Once the trap had done its job, an important decision was made: no on-site handling. Keeping wild boars too long near residential areas can create secondary risks: odor, noise, unnecessary curiosity, and crowds gathering. The trap remained intact, functioning as a stable protective unit throughout transport. The route was carefully selected, avoiding densely populated zones and any factor that might cause disturbance. This was the stage demanding the highest discipline. A single small mistake during transport could undo the entire chain of control established beforehand. Only after the herd had been moved away from the residential area did the real handling begin. At this point, the story was no longer about confrontation or prevention, but about responsibility in using a food resource safely and meaningfully. The wild boar meat was cleaned and carefully sorted, with any unsuitable portions removed. Every step adhered strictly to hygiene and food safety principles. Different cuts were prepared into nutritious meals. Lean portions were steamed or boiled to preserve their natural flavor. Energy-rich cuts were slow-stewed to support heavy labor. The entire process followed a sustainable mindset. No waste, no harm, no additional risk to the community. This was not the end of a control operation. It was how people take responsibility for what they have chosen to do. The next morning, the neighborhood returned to its normal rhythm. No new tracks, no lingering unease. Few people knew that just hours earlier, a precise chain of decisions had prevented a threat from spiraling beyond control. And what matters most is that the story did not end when the trap was activated. It extended through every step, positioning correctly, containing risk in the right place, disciplined transport, safe handling, and responsible use. Preventing disaster is not about the most forceful action. It is about a chain of correct decisions, from the first trap to the final meal. We are members of a wild hog control team in Oklahoma, and at Twin Eagle Ranch, there is no room for mistakes. More than 1,000 hectares of farmland are being destroyed day by day, fields torn apart, irrigation systems shattered, young corn and soybean sprouts wiped out in a single night. This is no longer a small problem. This is a fight for the survival of an entire harvest. And we do not rely on brute force, but on strategy. The screen of the Hawkeye camera we placed beside 3 big pig traps along the forest edge suddenly lit up. The hogs were in position. The bait, rooting juice, a mix of rotten cheese scent and sweet corn, was doing its job. 1:57 a.m. Dark shadows quietly entered the trap zone. No sound, no sign of suspicion. Wait a little longer. One more. Now, I hit the button. The round trap gate slammed shut. Instantly, the silence was ripped apart by the dry clang of metal striking metal. The hogs inside panicked, hurling themselves into the steel frame with such force that the whole area seemed to shake. The chaos lasted for several minutes before they finally realized they were completely trapped. To make sure nothing had gone wrong, we jumped into the Jeep Gladiator that same night and sped down the dirt trails. When the headlights hit the trap, the scene became crystal clear. The entire sounder, including hogs weighing over 200 pounds, had been captured. After the forest edge area had been disturbed, the hogs began shifting toward lower ground. To block their movement, I decided to set 2 additional octagon-style traps near the livestock pens. It was a narrow position directly along the trail they regularly used to reach water. Fresh rooting marks in the soil proved this had become the new hotspot. 9:21 p.m. The screen vibrated with movement. A large group entered. They sniffed, tested every steel bar. The tension weighed on every second. My hand stayed on the trigger button. Not too early, not too late. I held my breath. This is the moment. Press it. The steel frame shook violently. The hogs inside lost all sense of direction, crashing into one another in the darkness while their bodies slammed against the steel mesh. The chaos peaked before they slowly exhausted themselves and were locked in tight. Less than 2 hours later, at 10:50 p.m., the second trap alerted. This group was more cautious, just as they seemed to sense something was wrong. I activated the trap in time. 2 sounders. One night, full control. Deep in the woods is where the large boars usually hide during the day. There, I used a reinforced box trap built with a specially strengthened steel frame. Through the camera, I watched them circle outside. They inspected everything, moved around again and again. I did not rush. Patience is the only weapon that matters. When the whole group was fully inside the zone, I triggered it. The gate dropped shut. Hogs weighing more than 250 pounds went wild, smashing into the walls of the trap with deafening force. Panic swallowed the entire group until they understood every effort was useless. They had fallen into a trap calculated down to the inch. After the hogs were secured, we handled the site safely and efficiently. The muddy ground after the rain unexpectedly worked in our favor, making it easier to drag the heavy animals thanks to the slick surface. We used a trailer and truck combination to move the load. Once finished, the hogs were divided into 2 parts. One portion sent to a professional processing facility. The rest donated to local families to prepare as food themselves. Everything ended cleanly, restoring peace to the ranch. This is not a numbers game. This is a battle of minds. Observation, patience, perfect timing. One small mistake, and everything falls apart. But when everything works exactly as planned, we do not just catch wild hogs. We take back the fields. Last week, I visited a friend's farm in the United States. The scene was truly unsettling. Fields torn apart, water pipes broken, and lush green lawns completely plowed up overnight. Wild boars are not only strong, they're extremely persistent. They come back night after night. So we decided to take action. Not reckless hunting, but a controlled trapping solution, safe, legal, and effective. Before bringing a single steel bar into the woods, the first 2 to 7 nights were dedicated to observation using trail cameras. We studied footprints, rooting marks, and muddy wallows to determine feeding times, movement routes, and the size of the group. The data showed something interesting. The herd moved with remarkable discipline. If we wanted success, patience was essential. Once everything was ready, I joined my friend and his team to assemble the cage trap. The steel frame and metal mesh looked simple, but the goal was clear: strength and stability under heavy impact. Each panel was connected carefully. The most critical part was the sliding gate. It had to close decisively yet smoothly, so that at the right moment it wouldn't jam. However, there were areas where vehicles couldn't reach. Our solution was a 6-panel modular cage trap that could be carried and assembled directly at locations the boars frequently visited, usually damp soil areas near water sources. A notable feature was the feeding trough trigger system. The trap only activates when enough pressure is applied. This reduces false triggers and increases selectivity, a design that is simple yet smart. But the real key lies in the bait: corn mixed with almonds. We chose to trap during winter, when natural food sources like roots become scarce in the forest. The scent of fermented corn becomes almost irresistible to wild boars. The feeding trough is placed deep inside the trap and connected directly to the mechanical trigger. For 3 to 10 consecutive days, we spread bait without activating the trap. The goal is to let the herd feel safe and comfortable entering the area. Everything was ready for tonight. Night falls. The forest grows quiet. On the monitoring screen, large dark silhouettes begin to emerge from the tree line. Crunching leaves, low snorts of curiosity, driven by hunger and the irresistible smell. The boars slowly lose their usual caution. One by one, they step inside and bury their snouts in the feed trough, unknowingly applying pressure to the trigger. Bang! The gate slams shut in an instant. Startled and panicked, the boars charge into the metal walls, trying desperately to escape. But the trap holds firm. I quickly switch the camera feed to other trap locations nearby. The same scene repeats again and again. One mechanical trigger after another is activated. Steel gates drop decisively. Several groups of wild boars across different areas are successfully contained during the night. The angled sliding gate design cleverly uses the animal's own strength against it. The harder they push from inside, the deeper the gate wedges into the ground. A simple mechanism that completely counters their raw power. Catching them is only the first step. Handling the situation safely, professionally, and legally is the real challenge. The next morning, we drive a Jeep Rental to the trap sites. We avoid stressing the animals. A large tarp is placed over the transport cage, creating darkness that naturally calms the boars. Under the midday sun, the team even sprays water to cool them down before transport begins. From choosing the right season, preparing bait, to safe transportation, everything reflects a certain mindset. Control does not mean destruction. It means adjustment, balance, and allowing both people and the land to coexist. And after this visit to my friend's farm, one conclusion became very clear to me. The best solutions always begin with the right mindset, not with rushed action. You know, I've gone out with my father on many wild boar control operations, and he always told me one thing. When they start appearing on the road, it's no longer just a farm problem. An adult wild boar can weigh hundreds of pounds. If one suddenly appears on the road in the middle of the night, it can easily cause a serious accident. In states like Texas or Florida, this is far from rare. The next morning, I follow my father to meet with a group of farmers and the control team. Everyone quickly pointed out hot spots on the map, places where the soil had been torn up, areas where the herd often appeared, and the crossings where they most frequently cut across the road. The plan was divided into two directions. I went with my father. We set up trap number 6 along narrow trails, the kind of paths the herd had no choice but to use if they wanted to move toward the residential area.
All right, so we got our...
Meanwhile, the other team was setting up the corral trap. This was the main point of the operation. If trap number 6 served as the blocking layer, then the corral trap was where the circle would close. The goal was to capture the entire herd. We started spreading bait in layers, from the outside moving inward, allowing the herd to approach in the most natural rhythm possible. The first night, the cameras only recorded them standing outside, sniffing. The second night, a few smaller pigs stepped inside. In the nights that followed, the whole herd slowly grew accustomed to the place. Their appetite pulled them deeper and deeper into the trap. Then a most tense moment finally arrived. The gate closed. In just a second, the entire atmosphere changed. Inside the trap, the herd immediately compressed together, circling and shifting directions again and again within the confined space. Large bodies struck the steel frame, trying every possible way to find an escape. The sound wasn't sharp or piercing, but it was heavy and constant, enough to make my heart pound faster. But my father remained calm. He didn't look at the boars first. He looked at the structure of the trap, every joint, every load-bearing point. Then he said quietly, "Now, this is the important part." I immediately understood what he meant. If something failed at this moment, every calculation we had made before would become meaningless. Inside, the herd continued to surge from one corner to another. But the trap held. No animal escaped. No movement spread outward. All the pressure remained contained exactly within the control boundary. And in that moment, I finally understood how clear my father's plan had been all along. If you can hold them, you protect everything out. Not long after, the other trap positions around the outer ring also reported good results. Any individuals that might have broken away or moved along different paths had already been blocked to the right routes. The entire team stayed in position, moving only according to their roles. No one did anything outside the plan we had agreed on from the beginning. And that was exactly why everything reached its final stage smoothly. 1 week later, the results became obvious. No more herds cutting across the road at night. No fresh tracks near the residential areas. The cameras around the region had grown noticeably quieter. People started sleeping better. The night roads felt a little safer. On the way home, my father said something I will probably remember for the rest of my life. You don't have to do the biggest thing. You just have to do it right. I didn't answer, but I understood, because this was never a hunting story. This is how people maintain the line between safety and chaos. If you're interested in how Americans control wild boars to protect farms and community safety, follow the channel. I'll continue sharing stories from the field, where calm thinking and the right plan always matter more than rushed reactions.
Not every appearance of wild boar is a problem, but when fresh tracks overlap old ones, when the same routes repeat night after night, that's when territory is being taken, quietly, without a single confrontation. For the people living here, danger doesn't arrive overnight. It builds step by step, until the distance between wildlife and daily life is gone. So the solution chosen isn't confrontation, it's the creation of a control system designed to reduce conflict and protect human living space. Let's take a closer look at how that system works. The Boar Buster system is installed after days of field scouting. Placement, approach angles, and timing are all calculated based on the herd's movement habits. As night falls, infrared cameras pick up the first movements from the forest edge. The boars don't rush the bait. They stop, watch, test the ground, study the frame. This is typical behavior of animals shaped by constant survival pressure. The system activates exactly as planned, but the drop happens just a fraction of a second too late. That tiny delay is enough. The most alert individuals sense the danger. Within seconds, the entire herd pulls back cleanly, leaving nothing behind but an empty trap. This isn't a failure of equipment, it's a mismatch between mechanical timing and the razor-fast instincts of wild animals. By daylight, the system is fully inspected. No mechanical damage, no warped frame, no trigger malfunction. The problem lies in deployment. The hanging height isn't optimal, the sensor angle is slightly off, and most critically, the response delay is slower than a wild boar's natural reflex. Wild boar live in a world where survival is measured in seconds. They are smart, adaptive, and they never fall for the same mistake twice. Once danger is recognized, the behavior of the entire herd changes immediately. If the same setup is kept, the risk isn't repeated failure, it's escalation as the herd becomes more cautious and harder to manage. Sometimes, the smartest move is to stop before things get worse. Instead of pushing forward, all activity is paused. This isn't hesitation, it's restraint, meant to avoid further imprinting stress or warning signals onto the herd. The system is rebuilt from scratch and tested through continuous demo runs. Every detail is measured: drop speed, approach angles, natural movement lines. The goal isn't the fastest reaction, it's the right one. Consistent, predictable, reducing stress on both the animals and the surrounding environment. Once all parameters reach optimal levels, the system is redeployed at known entry points into farmland. That night, the herd appears exactly along its usual route. This time, the control process completes cleanly. The trigger responds fast and accurately. No panic, no uncontrolled collisions, no spillover risk. More importantly than what happens that night is what happens afterward. The herd's familiar movement route is cut off, and just like that, peace is restored, allowing local farmers to return safely to their fields.
Let's get them.
If the first intervention had gone perfectly, the most important lesson might have been missed. Wildlife control isn't for rushing, and it certainly isn't about blind faith in equipment. It demands observation, analysis, and constant adjustment. That moment of failure is what ultimately saved the entire harvest. Not through luck, but through clear judgment and responsibility in knowing when to act and when to stop.
Go on in.
I'd seen wild hogs caught in traps before, but I had never seen anything like that morning. The sound of steel wire pulled tight, the sound of dirt being torn up, that deep, heavy roar echoing through one corner of the woods. The hogs were thrashing hard, desperately trying to break out of the traps I had set earlier. The whole net system was shaking violently, and it all started because of one destroyed field. Last week, I went back to my hometown to visit my grandmother. As soon as I stepped into the yard, she didn't say much. She just quietly pointed toward the cornfield behind the house. I looked over. Half the field was ripped apart. Corn stalks were snapped flat, roots torn out, and the ground looked like it had been churned by a tiller. But nobody runs farm equipment out here at night. There was only one thing that could have done this. Wild hogs, and not just one or two. The neighbors said the hogs had been coming back for weeks. They tried fencing the field. They tried standing watch at night with torches. Some even took turns sleeping in the field shack. But these hogs weren't afraid of people anymore. They came in late. They tore through everything fast, and they vanished before sunrise. One of the older hunters in the village told me, "This sounder has a smart lead boar. He's the one guiding them. If we don't stop them now, this season's a total loss." That same morning, David, a few men from the village, and I decided we had to act immediately. This was going to be a large-scale operation, so we split into smaller teams. Following the hog tracks from the cornfield, we found the perfect location to set the traps. We had already brought in all the gear. This time, we decided to use net traps. Everyone took a job. One team drove heavy steel posts into the ground to lock down the trap positions. Another team unrolled thick coils of netting we had prepared ahead of time. Others stretched and tied the net. Every section had to be pulled tight and fastened carefully to the steel posts. It looked simple, but if even one part was off, the whole trap could fail. By the time the last net panel was up, the woods had gone completely silent. As soon as darkness settled in, the forest changed. The air felt heavy, like the whole place knew something was about to happen. We checked the traps through the cameras. One by one, the hogs started showing up, but I didn't expect that many. They moved slowly into the net trap, not sensing a thing. Then one hog suddenly noticed something was wrong and tried to bolt, and everything exploded into chaos. The net snapped tight like someone yanked it with full force. My heart started pounding. A big sounder had hit the net, more hogs than I could count at first. They thrashed hard, slamming into the mesh and making the whole section shake. And before I could even process that success, David yelled from the side. I turned to the screen. His net was buckling too. We hadn't even had time to say a word to each other when another loud crash echoed up from the valley below. I was pumped. It wasn't just one trap working. The whole trap system was going off, one after another. Net walls bulged in the dark. Everywhere, you could hear thrashing. Deep grunts. The sound of the woods coming alive. It was a strange feeling, part adrenaline, part excitement. We split up and ran to each trap point. Flashlights swept through the trees. Everywhere we looked, nets were shaking. Everywhere we looked, we had a catch. And I knew it. That night belonged to the net traps. After one long, tense night, we headed back to the trap sites at first light. Up close, that's when I really saw how big they were. Thick shoulders, scarred snouts, heavy muscle rolling under coarse hair. Looking at them, I felt two things at once: relief and a chill down my spine. These weren't just crop-raiding animals. They were survivors of the wild. And every one of them had to be handled humanely, following local rules and regulations, even after all the damage they had caused to the farmers here. On the way back, one of the hunters behind us suddenly stopped. He pointed at the ground near the edge of the trail. Another track, bigger, deeper. It meant the lead boar was still out there. I turned and looked back into the woods. If he was right, then this hunt had only just begun. This place had been ravaged by wild boars many times. Fields were torn apart, fences broken down, and the damage repeated season after season. Small traps only managed to catch a few animals, while the rest of the herd quickly learned to avoid them and became more cunning with time. We could no longer deal with the problem in scattered ways. Together with the farmers in the area, we agreed to build a large trap, strong enough to capture the entire herd at once. It was a collective decision by the whole community to put an end to the long chain of destruction. As evening approached, while the sunlight was still strong enough, we began building the trap. Heavy steel mesh panels were carried out and assembled into a tightly sealed circle. Each joint was tightened carefully and driven deep into the dry ground. The sound of hammers striking metal echoed sharply through the quiet air. From the outside, it looked like nothing more than a cold iron frame. But in reality, it was a giant lock waiting for the right moment to close. Once the trap enclosure was secured, we installed infrared cameras around the area, mounting them high on tree trunks to monitor the entire trail leading inside. Everything was done quickly and carefully. We minimized human traces and left early so that our scent could fade away in the wind. The final step was baiting the trap. Bags of corn were opened, their sweet scent drifting through the late afternoon air. We scattered the corn to create a faint trail leading gradually toward the center of the trap. The middle was where the bait was placed the heaviest. Step by step, the herd would be drawn deeper inside without realizing it. When everything was finished, the trap area fell silent again. Only the faint smell of corn lingered in the house. And somewhere in the forest, sensitive noses had already begun to catch the scent. When night fell, the forest seemed perfectly still, but none of us truly felt at ease. Then suddenly, movement appeared on the screen. The wild boars had arrived. The large lead so stepped forward first, sniffing the air as she followed the scent of corn. One by one, big and small, the rest of the herd slowly moved toward the trap. Wild boars possess powerful survival instincts and sharp awareness of their surroundings. But tonight, hunger and the sweet smell of corn outweighed any danger they might have sensed. Guided by the leader, the others followed behind. Without suspicion, without hesitation, they rushed in to enjoy the food. When we were certain the entire herd was inside the trap, suddenly, bang, the final watcher triggered the drop gate. The sharp crash of steel echoed across the forest. In that instant, the quiet woods exploded into chaos. The wild boars panicked, charging in every direction, slamming into the steel fencing, colliding with one another as they tried desperately to escape. The ground was torn apart beneath their powerful hooks. The mesh walls shook violently. The strongest boars attempted to ram the fencing with brute force. But it was all useless against the sturdy, carefully designed steel enclosure. The elasticity of the mesh pushed the powerful animals back each time they lunged. Some of the smaller boars tried to climb or leap over the barrier, but the height of the fence stopped them every time. Panic spread through the herd as they realized they were completely trapped inside a steel prison. In that moment, no one in our group dared to breathe too loudly. Everyone understood. This was a confrontation between the wild survival instincts of the boars and a plan carefully designed by humans. Before dawn broke, we approached the trap. The boars were no longer thrashing wildly as they had during the night. Many were exhausted, breathing heavily. Some stood quietly, their legs heavy with fatigue. Yet their instincts still pushed them to run whenever they sensed movement. Seeing the herd of more than 20 boars captured at once, the farmers finally let out a sigh of relief. Before opening the trap, the team checked every lock and joint again to make sure the structure remained secure. They carefully observed the animals to ensure the herd would not erupt into panic again. Each boar was restrained, following proper safety procedures. Specialized tools were used to prevent injuries, both for the people involved and for nearby livestock. The wild boars were then loaded onto trucks for further handling. Part of the harvest would be shared among the community according to prior agreement. The rest would be processed according to local regulations, ensuring disease control and environmental safety. After everything was finished, the surrounding area was checked one final time. The forest was returned to the quiet state it had before. And when everything was over, everyone understood that the success of the night did not come from luck or individual strength. It came from choosing the right plan from the very beginning. A large net trap, placed in the right location and strong enough to hold an entire herd, prevented the need for countless scatter traps, the kind that only lead to repeated failure. No one forgot that deeper in the forest, there were still other wild boars. But the events of that night had proven something important. When people stand together and choose the right solution, they can protect their crops, reduce damage, and keep the community safe.